mathematical derivations. So I hope you'll enjoy the mathematics. So I just summarize what we derived in the last lecture. And in this lecture, I will give you an example to show you how to use the equations to solve the real problem, real mathematical problem. For the calculus of variation, the motivation for this technique is we don't need to discretize the dynamic equation of the system, and we don't need to discretize the cost function. So this method can give you a continuous time solution to the problem. So the problem formulation is quite similar to that we used before. So we address cost function, a scalar cost function of J. So the J consists of two parts. So the first part is related to the final state. So the X is defined by the state vector. So it's not a location, it's not velocity, but it's a vector. It's a state vector that you use in your control class. So this function psi xf is only depends on the final state, of the state vector. So the second part is the integration between the starting time to the final time. So the function represents some quantity that you want to optimize. For example, the control energy represents the distance, represents the time, whatever quantities that you want to optimize, you want to take into account in your planning. So this function typically depends on the state vector as well as on the control input. So we minimize this cost function using the control input. So these are the cost function that we want to optimize in process of designing the path. So the optimization is subject to the dynamics of your system. So the dynamics of your system is given by a set of differential equations. So also the differential equation depends on the state vector and the control input, and there could be multiple functions that place the vector notation here. So the main difference between this problem and the problem that we discussed in the past couple of weeks is firstly, this cost function is a continuous time function, so it's not a discretized. So here, everything depends on the continuous time. And secondly, now the dynamics is represented by the differential equation, but not an algebra equation. So this kind of problem cannot be tackled with our technique discussed before. So these are the problem formulation. So the solution to this problem, in the last lecture, we made quite a lot of derivation. But as a conclusion, not so complicated. So the solution to this problem, I would say the necessary condition is firstly we have to construct the Hamiltonian. So the Hamiltonian remember how to construct Hamiltonian. So now we know the first part of the cost function only depends on the final state. And the second part is the process between T0 and Tf. And we have our control U and here. So the Hamiltonian must be constructed inside the integral because we have the U and here. So this H will be constructed in the same form. So we have the function plus this lambda f. So in the same form as we discussed before. But remember, we apply the Hamiltonian, apply the augment of function and construct Hamiltonian inside the equation. So in previous years, some students always make mistake at this part. Some students try to construct Hamiltonian with the function of psi. So if the construction of the Hamiltonian is wrong, so everything is wrong. So all the marks will be 0. So once the Hamiltonian is constructed, then the following conditions are quite similar as before. So here we notice that this Hamiltonian depends on 3 sets of parameters. So it must depends on the L, because the L is here, so it depends on X and U. So the H must be dependent on X and U, and also we introduce the lambda at here, so it also depends on lambda. So the necessary condition will evaluate the derivative of H in terms of the 3 set of variables. So you think about we will require 3 equations, 3 set of equations, but not 3 equations, 3 set of equations. So the 3 set of equations will be respectively dh dx, dh du, and dh lambda. So dh du, so this will be the same as we used before. So the dh du equal to 0. dh du equal to 0 will give us the optimal control, this u star. So you know this u star will be a function in terms of x and lambda. So the optimal control is not only depends on the state vector, but also on the Lagrange multiplier. And in this case, the Lagrange multiplier is not a value, not a single value, but it's a function depends on time. So you can imagine this lambda also got the trajectory from T0 to Tf. And this lambda also got dynamics. It depends on time. So the second set of function is dh. This dh, d lambda. dh lambda. So this dh lambda is very easy to evaluate because we have this h equal to L plus lambda f. So we calculate the derivative in terms of lambda. We have this one, L plus lambda f. So the L only depends on x and u. So we know the derivative of the LD lambda will be 0. And also this f only depends on x and u. So it's treated like a constant. So the d lambda transpose d lambda will give us identity matrix. So you know eventually this one will be 0, this one will be identity matrix in like a 1. So you got an F. got f. So this one is actually equal to x dot. So this part, if you look at this part, is actually just our dynamic equation. So it's the same. It's the same, just the same as this one. So the third set of equation is the lambda, the dynamics of lambda. So we know the lambda is also a function of time. So the lambda dot is equal to minus dh dx. So we have the three set of variables. So we have three set of also the three set of equations: the dhdu, dhd lambda, dhdx. So these three sets of equations, we know the first one is the set of algebra equations, and these two sets of equations are differential equations. So for the differential equations, to solve the differential equations, the boundary conditions are very important. The initial condition, especially the initial condition. So the boundary conditions will be determined by your initial state and the final state, the initial condition and the final condition of your problem. So later I will show you how to use the boundary conditions. But for the boundary conditions, we have four scenarios just related to your initial state and final state. The initial state is given or not given, and the final state is given or not given. So you got these four situations. So the first one is if the x0, the initial state, is given. If it's given, it's already given means it's fixed. You cannot change it. Cannot perturb the initial state because it's fixed. For example, your location, the initial location, the initial velocity of your vehicle. So if it's given, so it cannot be changed. You cannot perturb this initial state. So if the x0 is fixed, then we have the lambda 0. Lambda 0, I put it clear, I put the lambda as a value of t0. So sometimes we use lambda 0. Lambda 0 is equivalent to lambda, the value of lambda at time equal to t0. So the lambda 0 is free. It's free to take any value. It's free to take any value. So the second condition is if the x0 is free, if this one is not given, then this lambda t0 must be 0. Must be 0. So these two conditions are related to x0. So next we have the condition related to xf. So if the xf is given, I'll say fixed, it's given or fixed, then we have this lambda f, or lambda at the time of tf, lambda f is free. So finally, if the xf is not given, if this one is free, if the xf can take any value, then the lambda tf, lambda f, will be equal to g psi dxf. So the psi is a function of the final state. It only depends on xf. So these are the all equations for the calculus of variation. So we have these equations, we have the boundary conditions to be used to solve the equations. So for the reason why we have all these equations, all these boundary conditions, you can refer to the mathematics in the last lecture. So we discussed the details why we have this set of equations and these conditions. So in this lecture, I will use an example to show you how to use the technique to solve the applicable applications of the problem. So in the example, I also use the previous example, the one-dimensional planning problem, so that you can compare the results of this method and the previous method. So it's one-dimensional task planning, one-dimensional problem. So you remember this problem is we just get one-dimensional space, problem space. So we just get an X, one-dimensional space, and we got a mobile robot in this space. So this mobile robot, because it's a one-dimensional space, so this robot can only be moved forward or backward, so only in two directions. For the dynamics of the equation, we simplify the dynamics. So the dynamics given by this x dot equal to v, and the v dot equal to u. So the x is location, the v is velocity, so the u is control related to the acceleration. So the initial condition, remember we said at t equal to 0, we have the initial location to be 0 and the initial velocity to be 0. It's the initial situation of your robot. We also define the objective. Remember we defined the objective. So the objective is to guide the vehicle. So that at time equal to 6 seconds, the location of the vehicle at time equal to 6 will be 1, and the velocity will be 0. So it will be static. So we want to move the vehicle. So for example, here is 0. We want to move the vehicle to here at t equal to 6. This is t equal to 0. And the velocity, the final velocity is 0, so it's static. This is objective, and our cost function. So the cost function, even for the same objective, the cost function could be very different. So you can define different cost functions to represent what quantity you want to optimize. So assume in this problem, we remain the same cost function. So we want to minimize the control energy. So we want to minimize the control energy. So the control energy can be defined by integration from 0 to 6 seconds. So the control is given by this ut. So the ut squared dt is defined the energy, the whole energy applied to the vehicle. So these are the problem formulation. I think you still remember this problem. In the previous lecture, you remember we used a method, so first method based on the constraint optimization. So we optimize our constraint problem. The first method is based on the constraint. Augmentation. So to use this method, we have to discretize the dynamics and the cost function. So remember, in this method, we made some derivation at the start. We discretize the dynamics. This dynamics differential equation. So we approximate this differential equation. So we discrete the dynamics. After that, we also discretize the cost function. So we convert the integration into a summation. Remember, in this case, we set a delta t. We set a delta t so that we can discretize the cost function. So we set delta t equal to 2 seconds. So in this case, this n equal to 3. So our solution is u0 is 1/8. The u1 star equal to 0, and the u2 star equal to minus 1/8. Remember, our solution can be graphically illustrated like this. So the u star, we have this time. So 2, 4, 6. So from 0 to 2 is just the first index. Okay, equals 0. So this one is 1/8. So the second one is just 0, and the third one is minus 1/8. So the physical explanation of the result is the first part is the acceleration. The acceleration for k equal to 0, or c equal for the time from 0 to 2. So it's accelerate. You apply the constant force. That constant force is accelerate. And the second stage is to maintain the velocity. So the third, I would say the final stage, is to decelerate until the vehicle stop at the location of 1 with velocity equal to 0. So you remember, in the previous method, we construct the optimization problem, a constraint optimization problem, and we use our technique. We construct Hamiltonian, and we calculate the derivatives. Eventually, we get this kind of solutions. So today we will use the new method. We will use the new method. It's a calculus of variation. To tackle this problem. So firstly, we properly formulate the problem. So it's quite similar before. So we want to minimize our cost function. So it's represent the control energy. So this t equal to 0 to t equal to 6 seconds. This ut square dt. So now we use the continuous time ut, continuous time function ut to minimize this function. So it's subject to the dynamics of your vehicle. So dynamics given by this x dot equal to v and v dot equal to u. So initial condition remain the same. So for the t0 equal to 0, we have this x0 equal to 0 and the v0 equal to 0. For the final condition, for the tf equal to 6 seconds, we have the x6 equal to 1 and the v6 equal to 0. So in the calculus of variation, remember we also use the state vector. So we define the state vector. So these are the problem formulation. So the solution of the problem is we define the state vector. So they're the same as before. Define this x equal to the location and the velocity. So the x dot equal to this x dot v dot. So the x dot equal to v and the v dot equal to u. So by using the state vector, so we can slightly reformulate the problem. So now the problem can be represented. We want to minimize the cost function from t equal to 0 to t equal to 6. So this u square dt. So just ignore the dependence of time. But remember, the function, this u, is not a value, it's not a vector, but the function of time. So with u, we only got one input, the scalar input. It's not a vector. So subject to the dynamics. So the first dynamics equation is x. So the x can be represented by x1. So these are x1, these are x2. Two components in the state vector. So the x1 dot is this x dot. So the x dot equal to v is the x2. So the x1 dot equal to x2. And this x2 dot, so x2 equal to v, so the x2 dot is equal to v dot. So v dot equal to u, is equal to u. So now we have this new problem formulation. So if you compare this problem, formulation with our previous standard formulation, you can notice that they are the same form. But in this case, we have this sign. We have this sign equal to 0. So the control does not depend on the final state. It's not a function of final state. So this part is 0. So the second part is just the same form. And for the dynamics, we have the equation of this x dot equal to f. So that means this one is x1 dot equal to x2. So actually this x2, we can define this to be f1. So f1 is equal to x2. Just to simulate this format. We have the x dot equal to f. So the x2 dot equal to u. So this one is actually f2. So that means this f2 equal to u. So remember the definition of f1, f2, and here is different from what we use in the constraint optimization. So in the constraint optimization, we have to shift or move all the paths to one side. The other side to be 0, equal to 0, or smaller than 0. So we set the other part to be 0. Remember, in the optimization problem, we have, for example, this u is smaller than or equal to 2. So to deal with this problem, we need to shift this u to the other side. So we have this u minus 2 is smaller than or equal to 0. So we define this one to be f. But here, remember that you don't need to shift the x2 to the other side. You don't need this part to be 0. So if you shift the x2 to this side, this will be wrong. So in this case, we have the f1 equal to x2, and this f2 equal to u. Right? So it's not easy to understand, but you must remember, you must memorize this. In previous years, a lot of students made mistakes at this time. So they always use the wrong constraint functions. So eventually the results will be wrong. So in previous years, typically the problem at here, firstly, some student forgot to use the L. To construct Hamiltonian. You must use the function inside the integral. Secondly, how to construct this f. So remember to use the algebra part, but not the differential part to construct the f. So for the reasons, you can refer to our mathematical derivation in the last lecture. So you know this part has been dealt with separately. So you know we use the integration by parts to deal with this x dot. So now the problem has been properly formulated. Then the next will be like standard. So firstly, we construct the Hamiltonian. First, construct the Hamiltonian to this H. The standard equation is the H equal to L plus lambda f. So the L is just the function inside the integration. In this case, it's a u squared plus, so this lambda f, because here we got two constraint function, f1 and f2. So that means we require two Lagrange multiplier. So actually, this part we have lambda 1, lambda 2 transpose multiplied by f1, f2. So this part can be rewrite like this. So in the scalar format, it's given by this f1, so all these are scalar, not invariable, plus lambda 2, f2. So this equal to u square plus lambda 1 f1 equal to x2. So lambda 1 x2 plus lambda 2 f2 equal to u. So this part looks like straightforward, but it's very important. It's also very easy to make mistakes. This part. So we have the L is u squared plus lambda 1 f1 plus lambda 2 f2. So if this part is correct, then the following part is more straightforward to develop. So for the necessary condition, we have three. Remember, we have three sets of necessary conditions. So the first one is to evaluate this dh du equal to 0. So the dh du, the first part, the u square, give us 2u. So the second part depends on lambda 1 and x2. So it's nothing to do with u, so it's a 0. Plus this lambda 2. So this equal to 0. So this gives us the optimal control. So we know this u star is given by minus a half lambda 2. That's from this one. So any problems? So the dh du equals 0, and here is a function of u of h. So you just calculate this equation to du. So you have this equation. So you have the optimal control. So we see now the optimal control depends on the Lagrange multiplier. So now the Lagrange multiplier is a function of time. So the u is also a function of time. So the second set of equation is given by this lambda dot. So the dynamics of the Lagrange multiplier is given by minus dh dx. So remember this. So we have our equation here. So lambda dot equal to minus dh dx. So the first one, this lambda 1 dot equal to minus dh dx1. So we have our h and here. So what's the results for dh dx1? Yeah, so it's 0. It's independent of x1. Independent of x1, so it's 0. So the lambda 1 dot equal to 0. So what's the meaning of the lambda 1 dot equal to 0? So if the derivative of a function equal to 0, that means this function is not changing. It's only not changing because the derivative is 0. So it actually means this lambda 1 is a constant. It's a constant. Constant from t0 to t1 to t equal to 6. So it's a constant. So for a constant, we may, so for example, we let this lambda 1 equal to c1 as a constant. So similarly, we have the lambda 2 dot equal to minus dh dx2. So what's the value for the dx2 from this equation? So the first part is 0. Then the second part, from second part we got lambda 1. So the third part is also 0 because there's no x2 at here. So we got minus lambda 1. So what's the meaning of this equation, lambda 2 dot equal to minus lambda 1? So from here, we know the lambda 1 is a constant. So lambda 1 is constant. So the derivative of lambda 2 is a constant. So what's the meaning of this? So if a derivative of function is constant, that means this function is a linear equation of time. It's a linearly dependent on time. So we know this lambda 2 will be in the form of minus lambda 1 minus c1 t plus another constant c2. So here we have these two constants, but we don't know the value of the constant. But we know this lambda 1 and the lambda 2 will follow this function form. So the lambda 1 will be a constant. So lambda 2 will be a linear equation. So we know for lambda 1 is a constant if you plot this lambda 1 with time. It's a constant, so it's just something like this. So it will remain constant from 0 up to 6. For the lambda 2 is a linear function of time. So if we plot this for t for lambda 2, it will be either in a form like this, for example, form like this from 0 to 6. But here it's not need to be 0. It could be any value to be to 6. Or it can be another format, increasing, another format like this. It either increasing or decreasing, but it will be aligned. For lambda 2. So this from our intuitive observation. So the third set of equation is given by this x dot given by dh d lambda. So we know this is just given by f. So this equation simply is a constraint, simply has constraints x1 dot equal to x2 and x2 dot equal to u. So these are the three set of equations. So for the boundary conditions, remember we have x1 0 equal to 0, x2 0 equal to 0. Remember the initial location of the vehicle is 0, the initial velocity is 0. So that means we have the lambda 0 is free. So the lambda 1 0 is free. And also the lambda 2 0 is free. It's because the x0 is given. For the final state, we have this x1 6 equal to 1 and x2 6 equal to 0. So this means also this xf is already given. so it's fixed. So here is x0 is fixed, scalar. So in this case, the lambda 1, 6 will be free to take any value, and also this lambda 2, 6 is free to take any value. So these are the equations and boundary conditions that we have derived from the necessary conditions. So how to solve these equations? So let's summarize what we have got so far. So far we got the differential equation. We got a set of differential equations. So the first differential equation is this lambda 1 dot. So the lambda 1 dot equal to 0. Lambda 1 dot equal to 0. The lambda 2 dot. Lambda 2 dot equal to minus lambda 1 minus lambda 1, and the x1 dot equal to x2. And this x2 dot equal to u. x2 dot equal to u. So the u is equal to minus a half lambda 2. So it's minus a half lambda 2. So these are the differential equation. So for the initial condition, we have the initial condition for all these 4 variables. So for the lambda 1, 0, lambda 2, 0. So these two values, so they are free to take any value. So we know these are free. These are not unknown, not decided yet. So for the x1, 0 equal to 0, and this x2, 0 is also equal to 0. So these are given. So here we have 4 different equations. So if you solve this equation, different equation with these initial conditions, you will get the solution to this problem. So you will be able to solve the lambda 1t, lambda 2t, this x1t and x2t. But however, the differential equation is much difficult to calculate than the algebra equation. So typically, it's very difficult to solve the differential equations by hand. So typically, we require the computer to solve the set of different equations. Also in this problem, we notice that we have this different equation. So this different equation can only give you the trajectories of your function, but it's not fixed. Because this initial value is unknown. So for example, for the lambda 1, so here we know the lambda 1 will be a constant. But because the lambda 1, 0 is unknown, so we don't know where is lambda 1. So lambda 1 could be here, or it could be at here, or could be at here. And also from here, we know the lambda 1, 0 and the lambda 2, 0. So they are free to take any value. So we need to wisely choose these 2 initial values for the lambda 1, 0 and the lambda 2, 0. But what is the criteria? So how to choose these 2 values? how to choose these two values. So the idea is like this. We have the differential equation. We have this initial condition. So by solving this set of differential equation, we do the, to solve the differential equation, typically we do the integration. So it's some kind of integration operation. So to solve the differential equations. So once you solve this differential equation, you will got your results. So for any initial value, you can solve your differential equation. You will got a trajectory of your lambda x. So from here, you can check with the final state. So what are our final state? Our final state for the lambda 1, 6, lambda 2, 6, x1, 6, and x2, 6. So we will, once we solve this equation, these two quantities are fixed from our equation. So for these two, so they are free to take any value. So we don't care the values for these two quantities. But however, for these two, we know the x1 6 must be equal to 1. So the x2 6 must be equal to 0. So this one, so we can use these two quantities to check if the x1 6 and the x2 6 meet the final condition. So we can use this final condition to check and determine the correct value for this lambda 0, lambda 1 0, and lambda 2 0. So these are the idea. So the idea is like this. So we try different values for the lambda 1 0 and lambda 2 0, and to see which set of values can meet the final conditions. So this one will be the results, the optimal lambda 1 0 and lambda 2 0. So if this one is fixed, if these two quantities are fixed, when you solve the solution, then the whole trajectories of the lambda and x will be fixed. So you know your optimal control. But typically, we cannot do this by hand. We cannot try different values just by hand. But we can use the computer to help us to try different initial conditions, eventually decide which initial condition can meet the final condition. So to use the computer to do this, so we still use the ODE 45 function to solve the differential equation as in your first assignment. So we need to define our state. So the state, so we got four quantities in here, so we define the state to be lambda 1, lambda 2, x1, x2. We define the state, and here to solve the differential equation, we use the MATLAB, the ODE 45 function. ODE 45 function to solve the differential equation, and to try different initial conditions and compare with the final condition. So we can use the MATLAB solve function to do this. So we introduced the F-solve in the last lecture, so you still remember this. So this is the basic idea how to tackle the problem. So next, I can show you how to implement this idea. So this idea sounds quite interesting and feasible, but how to implement this? How to try different initial conditions and intelligently check the final condition. So we require two functions to solve this. So first one is to be used in ODE 45. Remember, we need to define the state function. So I put the code here. So this state function just used to implement this the same function here. So our function is lambda 1 dot equal to 0, lambda 2 dot equal to lambda 1. So the full function here. So this state function just used to represent this equation. So the state, this input state is a column vector. So the state is a column vector, is lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda x1, x2. So the state is a state vector. So the first component in the vector is lambda 1. So I just put R1. So actually it's a lambda 1. So I just use our R1 to represent the lambda 1. So the second component is a lambda 2. For lambda 2, I just use R2 for easier representation. For the x1 is the third component. So the third component equal to x1. So the fourth component equal to x2. So I just put the lambda 1, lambda 2, x1, x2, and here. So next, we define the different equations. So the first one, the d lambda 1 dt, the lambda 1 dot is equal to 0. So this one is equal to 0. So lambda 2 dot, the d lambda 2 dt equal to minus lambda 1. So minus lambda 1. So this one is the lambda 1 dot. This one is lambda 2 dot. So this one is dx1 dt equal to x2. So it's x1 dot. And the final one is x2 dot. So the x2 dot equal to minus a half lambda 2, lambda 2 that here. And after that we retain this state dot. You know this one is just the state dot. So the input variable is the state and the output is the state dot. So it's the definition of the different equation. Right? So you should be very clear about this one because you already used it in your first assignment. So this is the first function to define the differential equation. So the second function is to check different values, different initial conditions, and compare with the final condition. So here, this input is a lambda 0. So this one is actually the lambda 0. So I try, because I want to try different initial values for the lambda. So this one is also a vector given by this lambda 1, 0, lambda 2, 0. So this one is unknown. It's unknown and it's an input to the function so that we can try different initial values for the lambda. So the first one, the R1 T0 is just the lambda 1, 0. So this is the first component. So this one is the second component, lambda 2, 0. So this one is the x1, 0. x1 at equal to 0 equal to 0, and x2 equal to 0 equal to 0. Because the initial location is 0, the initial velocity is 0. So we require this x1, 0 equal to 0, and x2, 0 equal to 0. So here, we know we require these four quantities, lambda 1, 0, lambda 2, 0, this x1, 0, x2, 0, as the initial conditions so that we can solve the differential equation. So we use this four quantity to solve the differential equation. To solve the differential equation, I define the time interval. So we know the control happens between t equal to 0 to t equal to 6. So time interval. So here I define the initial condition that I defined here. So we can use this to solve the differential equation. So the ODE 45, then this part is just the equation that I defined here. So this is the differential equation, this is the time interval, these are the initial condition I defined here. So the MATLAB will help you to solve the differential equation numerically and get all the results at here. So the output, we know the output will be the final result. So the x out, this t out is just the time, represent the timing from 0 to 6. So this x out will be, because here we define four components. So this x out will be the trajectory of these four components, of these four functions. So eventually this x out will be is a matrix. So the first column will corresponding to this lambda 1, corresponding to this lambda 1. So this will be lambda 1t. Then the second column will be this lambda 2t. The third column will be this x1t. The second one will be x2t. So it's a column. We got all these column vectors to represent the trajectory of your variable. So far we already use the state function and the initial condition and solve the differential equation. So next we need to compare whether the final condition has been met. So we check the final value in this trajectory, because we are all between these two paths. So these two, we know these two are free. These two are free, we don't care. But for these two, we can check with the final condition. So the last one will be the value corresponding to t equal to 6. So this one corresponding to t equal to 6 seconds. So for the third column will be the location. The fourth column will be the velocity. So we get the value. We get this value is calculate location and calculate velocity. So we compare with our final condition. So here is our final condition. So we compare the calculated actual value with the desired value. So we know these two are the desired value. So these two are the real the real value. So we evaluate the difference. So if your initial values for the lambda are wrong, then this one will not be 0. So the final condition cannot be met. But however, if you are lucky enough and get the correct value for the lambda 0, eventually this one will be 0. Right? So this is the idea of the MATLAB code. So next I can show you how to, what the results of this one. So here I got the same code for the state equation and the equation used to calculate the difference between the actual final state and the desired final state. So we know this function is the input is lambda 0, and the result is the distance between the actual final state and the desired final state. So let's try what happens. So this function is a condition function for 1D outlining. So I just try to run it. So for the conditional function for 1D problem. So we know the input is just the possible initial value for the lambda 0. So for example, I try 0, 0 to see what happens if we set the lambda 1, 0 equals 0 and the lambda 2, 0 equals 0. So how far, if we have these two lambda 0s, then how far is the actual final state and the desired final state? So we can see they are not, the result is not 0. So especially the location are not met. Location not 0, but here we got a difference. So if we try a different value, for example for 10 and 10, so you'll see you got another distance. It becomes further to the final conclusion. So how to find the correct value for lambda 0? So we can use the solve. So assume put desired value to be lambda 0 star. So assume I use this one to represent the desired ideal value. The ideal value for lambda 0. So we can use the MSolve to help us to solve this problem. So the first input will be the function. So we need the function handle. So it will be just the function here. So a conditional function 1D. So the x0 is just the initial test. The initial test will be any value in theory. So for example, I just put 0, 0. So the output, also the results, will be the ideal lambda 0. So here, you can see the ideal lambda 0 is given by these values. So now let's test whether this value can meet our results. So here we use the lambda lambda 0 star. So what are the desired value for this one? Yeah, the desired output is 0 because we solve this one. So you can see now you get the distance to a power of minus 15 to minus 15. So you got 0. So we already got the lambda 0 star. So we can get our trajectory. So the trajectory will be inside this function. So to get the trajectory, I just put a keyboard command so that we can stop inside the function. Then I run the same command with the ideal lambda 0 star. So here you can see now the program stopped inside the function. Then we can check the output at here. So here we know we got this T out is the time from T0 to T6. We can check this T out. We can see the T out is just the time. So the timing between 0 all the way to 6 seconds. So for the X out, for this X out, it will be a matrix. So the first column will be lambda 1. So let's plot the first column corresponding to the time. So the X out, we plot the first column. So this is supposed to be lambda 1t. Remember from our previous intuitive understanding, this lambda 1t will be a constant. So we can see, so now the lambda 1t is a constant, all the way from t0 equal to t6. So lambda 1 remain as a particular value. Then we can plot the lambda 2. So the second Lagrange multiplier for the lambda 2. From our previous analysis, we know this lambda 2 is supposed to be a direct line. It's a linear function of time. So we can see now we got a linear function of time. It's a line. Then we are more interested in the trajectory of our vehicle. So the third column is supposed to be the location of the vehicle, the trajectory of the location. If I run this, we can see when the time equals 0, the vehicle is located at 0. So it will running using time. And eventually, when the time equals 6, the location will be at the location of 1. So the x it will be 1. So finally, what will be the velocity of our vehicle? So we can see our velocity of the vehicle. So it's more interesting to show the dynamics. So we can see the vehicle, the velocity increasing at the first start, and then gradually decreasing to 0 and to 6. Then what are the optimal control? So remember that we define this optimal control to be minus a half and lambda 2. So lambda 2 is given by this x out. X out 2. The second column is the lambda 2. So this divided by 2 is supposed to be the optimal control input. So here is supposed to be the control input. So we can see the optimal control input like this. So you apply the force, gradually decrease the force until it is 0. And then apply the force in another direction and gradually increase the force until the vehicle stops. So you can compare these results with our results from the first method and to see what the difference and try to explain the difference by yourself. Okay, so that's all for today. So we'll see you on